Welcome to session 3 of the desk lamp modeling session. For this one, we're going to go ahead and model out this light bulb. I just went on Google Images and just looked up some references on a light bulb and found this one, and we'll go from there. So normally I would model this out with a sphere, but for the sake of expediency, we're going to go ahead and try a different method called the CV curve tool. So all you have to do is go to Create, CV curve tool. And what this will allow for us to do is outline this object and render it out as a NURBS or a polygonal mesh without having to extrude and play around with the edges. And it will give us a pretty good result. So let's go ahead and outline this up. And for reference sake, to import an image from this view, all I did was go to my right view, or in this case, front view, go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and it gives you exactly what you want. And then, of course, you can play around with some of the settings, like if for the alpha gain, this will give you a completely, non-transparent image. But if you want some transparency, you just bring this down a bit, and there you go. So now you can at least see of the outline of what you're going to be modeling. So we'll go ahead with our CV curve tool, and then as best as we can, try to outline this to its exact reference. You don't want to use too many control vertices, because what will happen is you'll then have more problems outputting this if you have too many to go with. All right, let me just zoom on in there so I can get a better reference. And we can go ahead and edit this once we're done. So I just want to outline as best as I can. There we go. Okay, so I did it pretty fast. Obviously it's not perfect, but there are some ways we can fix it. All right, so make sure you're in your Surfaces tab, not your polygons, your surfaces. Go to Edit Curves, and there are a few options for us. There is something called the Smooth Curve, which will, of course, as it speaks for itself, smooth the curve. And as you can see, it does a pretty good job with smoothing it, but unfortunately it gets rid of all of these edge loops around the bottom of the base of the light bulb, and I actually want that detail, so we're just going to go ahead and undo it. There's also something called the Rebuild Curve. You can rebuild the curve, and it will algorithmically rebuild it to a point where it doesn't have any sort of jagginess to it, but sometimes it doesn't give you the best result. So let's go ahead and just try it out. Let's just go ahead and save that. And as you can see, it doesn't do it exactly how I wanted it to. So, and unfortunately, even with playing with the settings, still doesn't do it exactly how I want. So for this point, I'm just going to go ahead and do it myself. And as they say, if you want something done right, just do it yourself. So I'm just going to go ahead and, as best I can, try to match up the reference. Sometimes you might want to delete a few of these because they don't really need them. So let's bring that out, bring this in, maybe we'll bring that up a bit. There we go. I think down here is where it needs most of the editing. Just bring that down a bit. Bring that in. Play around with that. Okay, that looks pretty good. So once we have edited this curve ourselves, let me just fix that top a bit. It's a little bit off. All right, so once you've rebuilt it to your liking, you're just going to go ahead and revolve this. So you go in your Surfaces tab, Surfaces, Revolve. We're going to do this from the Y-axis, and then the output geometry, we're going to talk about this. There's NURBS, which will give you almost an exact replica of what you just outlined. However, it's a NURBS polygonal object, which you will not be able to do a lot with, so that sort of limits you. So, but I will go ahead and give you an example of what it looks like. And as you can see, it gives us an almost exact reference of this light bulb. Oh my goodness, this looks phenomenal. However, as I stated earlier, it is a NURBS object, which means you're not going to be able to do much with. So you'll be sort of limited. Not to say that you cannot use this, it's just for our demonstration and purposes, it's not what we want. We just want a polygonal object. And of course, it's very high res as well. So what we'll do to convert this is we're going to go to Modify, Convert NURBS to Polygons. And with our settings here, we can go with triangles, quads, general, you name it. So we'll go with quads, count, tessellation count, it's 500. I think that's a little bit too high. We'll just go with 200 for now. It's not going to give us an exact match of what the NURBS object is, but it will give us an object in a polygonal form. And as you can see, that's what we want. It's not perfect. It looks a little bit low res, but that's exactly what we are striving to do. And if you want, you can go ahead and play around with the settings. If you want it higher res, there you go. But personally, I don't see it being necessary. All right, so we have our light bulb. So let's go ahead and get rid of all this. Take that, bring it back. We'll go to our top view, bring this, delete history. We'll name this light bulb. And then we'll just bring it into the middle. And then we'll do a 180. And then we're just going to size it down to the size of the lamp. So I'll make that a little bit small, scale that a little bit more, make it smaller. And a little bit more, okay. And then we'll go into our right view, zoom on in, angle this up to the lampshade. And we'll just bring that into the middle, and there we go. We can maybe mess around with it a little bit more, bring it up so it's not as exposed. And there we go. All right, so now we have ourselves a light bulb. All right, and for the second step, we're going to go ahead and add in a cable for the outlet. We can do this in two possible ways. We can either take a cylindrical object and bend it to our liking, or we could use the CV curve tool that we initially demonstrated with making the light bulb and create ourselves a cable. And I think for the sake of expediency, as I have often stated, that would be the most convenient. So we'll go into our top view, center this out, and we'll use the CV curve tool and create ourselves a cable to our liking. All right, so there we go. So we have ourselves a cable. And then if we want to edit this, we can go into Control Vertex by right-clicking and seeing what we can do. We can obviously make some adjustments here. If we want to bend this a little bit more, that's fine. If we want to bend that this way, you can do that. I mean, there's endless possibilities and a lot of options. And if we want, we can drag this out a bit more to make it longer. And then we can take this, bend it a little bit, etc. Now, obviously, we can do a few things. We can obviously go back to our edit curves, or we can smooth it out. There we go. And then we can also rebuild it, which, does a pretty good job. So we smooth it out. So now it doesn't look as jaggedy. I deleted that one little section. There we go. All right, so that looks pretty good. So there are two possible ways we can go ahead and extrude this this curve right here. We can take a NURBS circle, or we can take a polygonal object and extrude it from the endpoint to match up with the reference curve. And for this, I'm going to demonstrate both methods. The first method is, of course, using the NURBS circle. So you're going to go to Create, NURBS primitive, circle, and then you're going to drag this at the end of the line right here. Now you're going to want to do this verbatim here because this is the only way it works. So you're going to drag this down so it matches up, and then you're going to want to bring it up on its x-axis. And then you're going to want to rotate it on the y-axis so it matches up with the end, so they're both meeting. And that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll go ahead and increase that up 5. Or let's try 30. There we go. So we'll just make sure that's lining up. And then we'll scale it down a bit so it's not too big. And there we go. All right, so what this is going to allow us for us to do is take this NURBS circle, and then simultaneously selecting this, it will allow us to extrude out a cable without having to do any sort of hard work modeling. So we'll just go into our Surfaces tab, Extrude, and then here we have some extrude options. Style, distance, flat, tube. We're going to want to go with the tube. Result position, at profile, pivot, closest endpoint. You can play around with some of the settings if you want to get any different results. Curve range, complete. Output geometry, there's NURBS, polygon, and Bezier. We're going to want to go with a polygon option because when we went with NURBS, there's a little bit less that you can do with it as opposed to a polygonal object. Then we're going to go to type. There's triangles, quads, general, count, standard fit, control points. We're going to want to go with quads, tessellation method general, and then with the default settings, I have it at 13 for number of U, and for number of V, 15. So we'll just keep it at that, and then we'll go ahead and extrude. And there we go. So that's something what we have. Now obviously it's off our path, and the only reason why it's off the path is because we have it at fixed path off. If you want to turn that on, just press 1. And there you go. So now it's on the path. And if you want to add in some more edge loops, that's fine. So we can go to, let's say, 20. Or if we want to really go high res, we can go to 50. The higher you go, the smoother it's going to look. But for this demonstrative purpose, it doesn't seem necessary to make it that higher polygon face count because we're not going to necessarily see it, but it does help with giving that effect of realism. So now there's a second option that we can do. So let's go ahead and hide this and hide that as well. There's a second option we can try. It's not as clean, but it certainly works if you don't want to do that method. Create a polygonal cylinder, drag it out, and pretty much doing the exact same thing as you did before, except we're going to rotate this on its x-axis. We're going to delete all except the top face. And if we want, we can go ahead, get rid of the caps, delete all but the cap. And there we go. Then we'll just rotate this at -35. delete history, freeze transformations, and then we'll just bring this sucker on in to match the endpoint of the line. Okay, and then we'll scale it down, make it a little smaller. And there we go. Okay, so once we have that, just try it in a little bit. All right, so once we have that, same thing, we're going to first select the face, and then we're going to select the line. Now, in order for you to extrude it this way, you have to actually use the extrude option. It won't give you that feature by right-clicking and using the marketing menus. So we'll go ahead and extrude. All right, now first thing you're going to see is this really funky object that doesn't seem to look right, but trust me, it will look right once we add in some division. So let's go ahead and add in 50. And there we go. Now, for some inexplicable reason, Maya has this strange algorithm where it takes one face and extrudes it from the pathway of the curve, and then there's another where it gives a straight line. But lucky enough, it's easy to fix. So all you have to do is select that line and delete. And there you go. So then you can just delete that, delete any of these faces, and there you go. You have yourself another curve, almost exactly like the one we had initially. So that is pretty much it for the demonstrative purpose of creating the light bulb and the cable and for this desk lamp. And if you ever want to make adjustments to it, if you want to go into your curve tool, or curve outline that is, and play around with some of the settings, go to control vertex, and then you can update this in real time, or if you want to shorten that out, make it longer. The possibilities are endless. And there we go. Then delete the history. Now, once you delete the history, though, you can no longer manipulate it through the curve, so just keep that in mind. And there you go. Now, I obviously could make this come out of the lamp shade, but for this purpose, I'm not going to. Oops, there was an extra base that I had. And there you go. So, okay, well, that's all I have for you on this desk lamp model. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or possibly even suggestions as to how I could have done it better or what other methods there are to making this, please go ahead and expound on that in the comments section. Otherwise, thank you very much, and we will see you next time.